The sky was burning. 12-year-old Jace Keller ran through the smoking ruins of Colony Theta 9, his lungs filled with dust, his heart pounding in his chest. Explosions still echoed in the distance, and flashes of red and blue fire lit up the dark sky. He didn't know where his parents were. One moment they were in the market. The next, chaos. He had no choice but to run. Run and hide. His small boots kicked through ash and broken metal. He slipped through the ruins of what had once been a supply depot and found a hidden staircase leading underground. With no other option, Jace hurried down into the unknown. The stairwell opened into a cool, silent corridor. The air smelled stale, like something old and sealed for years. Light flickered from weak ceiling panels. It was quiet. Too quiet, but better than the war above. Then he heard it, a soft sound. Breathing. Then a small whimper. Jace turned toward a steel door slightly ajar. Cautiously, he stepped forward and pushed it open. Inside, crouched in a corner, was a young girl. She wasn't human. Her skin was a soft shade of violet with faint blue markings that glowed in the dim light. Her eyes were wide, luminous, and filled with fear. She looked no older than he was. Her silver hair was messy and tangled. One leg was hurt, wrapped in a torn piece of cloth. She stared at him, frozen. Jace took a small step forward, holding up both hands. "It's okay," he whispered. "I won't hurt you." She didn't reply. She just stared. Jace looked around. The room was empty except for broken crates and emergency supplies. It must have been a storage room during the early days of the colony. The girl looked like she had been hiding for a long time. "Are you alone?" he asked softly. She gave a tiny nod. Her voice was quiet and strange, but gentle. "They left. I hid." Jace frowned. He had seen aliens before, but mostly on news screens or in school files. Never this close, never like this, but she didn't look dangerous. She looked scared, just like him. "My name's Jace," he said, kneeling slowly to her level. "What's yours?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Sira." He smiled. "Nice to meet you, Sira." For a long time, neither of them spoke. The silence outside told him the fighting had moved further away, but he knew it would return. He had to find help. But could he leave her? She tried to stand but gasped in pain. Jace rushed to help, gently steadying her. "You're hurt." "It's not bad," she said, though her face winced with every movement. "I know a place. Safer than here," Jace said. "Can you walk if I help you?" Sira looked into his eyes. Something about the way he spoke calmed her. Finally, she nodded. They moved slowly through the underground passages. Jace supported her with one arm as they followed the winding corridors. He brought her to an old maintenance room he had passed earlier. It had a door that could be locked from the inside, and even some old food packs. Not much, but safer than above. For the next 3 days, Jace cared for her. He cleaned her wound, shared his water, and told her stories to make her laugh. He didn't understand everything she said. Some words were strange, but they found a way to talk. Sira told him she was from the Velthari, a peaceful people caught in a war they never wanted. Her family had sent her to safety, but her escape pod landed here, in the middle of chaos. "No one's coming for me," she had said quietly one night. Jace shook his head. "Someone will, and until they do, I'll stay." She looked at him then, a small smile on her lips. "You're strange, human boy. I get that a lot," he grinned. On the 4th day, they heard the low hum of a ship landing. Jace peeked outside and saw a rescue vessel, silver, sleek, and not of human design. The Velthari had come. Sira stood slowly, limping less now. "I must go." Jace looked down. "Yeah, you'll be safe now." She turned to him, then suddenly reached into her pocket and pulled out a tiny crystal pendant. It shimmered with a soft light. "Take this. It's part of me," she said. "If you ever wear it near our stars, we will find you." He took it, stunned. Sira held his hand. "Promise me something." "Anything. When we're older." when this war is just a story? Will you come back? Jace nodded without hesitation. I promise. Then she was gone, into the ship, into the stars, into his memory. Jace stood there holding the pendant as the ship vanished into the sky. The fire was gone, the sky was quiet, but the promise remained. Years had passed since Jace Keller made that promise to Sira. Now, at 28, Jace sat in the cockpit of a galactic Unity Core shuttle, staring out at the stars. He had come a long way since his childhood. His hair was darker now, his face marked by the weight of experience. He had traveled across planets, seen wars, helped bring peace. He had saved lives, and in return, many had tried to save him. But through it all, there had always been a single question that lingered in his mind. What happened to Sira? The promise he had made to her, long ago when he was just a boy, had never left him. Every time he saw a shuttle pass by, or heard the name Vaelthari whispered among diplomats, he remembered her face. The glowing eyes, the soft smile, and the way she had placed that shimmering pendant in his hand. The pendant was now tucked carefully in his pocket. Jace had tried to forget. He had told himself that it was just a child's fantasy, a story that had faded with time. But the years had not erased the memory of her, nor the feeling that he had failed her. No matter how much time passed, he had never been able to let go of the hope that one day he would return to Vaelthari and see Sira again. That was his promise. The shuttle's console beeped, snapping him out of his thoughts. He glanced at the screen, reading the coordinates. They were close now. Vaelthari. The planet was surrounded by a blockade, a network of sensors that made approaching without authorization nearly impossible. Jace, however, had been planning this for months. He had connections, favors, and more than a little determination. He had to see this through, no matter the risk. His heart raced as the shuttle moved closer to the surface. He had heard the stories, how the Vaelthari had been in hiding for years, keeping to themselves after the war. Many had assumed they were a lost civilization, gone, forever. But Jace knew better. Sira had survived, and she had promised him she would wait. As the shuttle touched down on the planet's surface, Jace gathered his things. The door opened with a hiss, and a gust of warm air greeted him. The landscape was barren, with stretches of rock and sparse vegetation, but far in the distance he could make out the gleaming silhouette of a city. The shuttle's engines hummed as it powered down, but Jace didn't waste any time. He adjusted his jacket, making sure his communications device was secured and his emergency supplies were within reach. He stepped out into the hot sun, squinting against the glare. He had no idea what he would find. The stories he had heard suggested that Vaelthari was a planet of secrets. Some believed its people had gone into hiding to avoid the wrath of the humans, while others claimed they had retreated to a distant world altogether. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was keeping his promise. He made his way toward the city, walking through fields that stretched into the horizon. The silence of the planet was almost deafening, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Jace's mind raced with questions. What would Sira be like now? How much had changed? Would she even remember him? As he approached the outskirts of the city, he felt the weight of the world pressing down on him. His thoughts were interrupted by a flash of movement. He froze, squinting into the distance. Several figures stood atop a high ridge, watching him. His heart skipped a beat. Who were they? He kept walking, but the figures didn't move. The city was ahead, but there was still a long way to go. Jace took a deep breath and continued, but the unease stayed with him. Something felt off. After several hours, he finally reached the gates of the city. Massive walls of crystalline material rose before him, gleaming in the harsh light. There were no guards, no security. It was as if the city was waiting for him. Or perhaps it was waiting for someone else. Suddenly, the ground beneath his feet trembled. A low hum filled the air. Jace froze, instinctively reaching for his communicator. He raised it to his lips but stopped when a voice echoed through the silence. "Human," the voice said, deep and resonant. "You are not welcome here." Jace turned, his hand still on the communicator. Standing before him was a tall figure wearing armor that shimmered with a strange, otherworldly light. The figure's eyes were glowing, and the voice had an almost hypnotic quality to it. "I don't want trouble," Jace said, keeping his voice steady. "I'm just looking for someone. Her name is Sira. She's from this planet." The figure remained still, studying him with glowing eyes. Then without a word, the figure turned and gestured for Jace to follow. Jace hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. His heart pounded in his chest, the weight of his journey beginning to feel real. This was it. He had come all this way. He wasn't turning back now. As they walked through the city, Jace felt a strange sense of déjà vu. There were no signs of life, no bustling crowds or vehicles. It was eerily quiet. The city felt abandoned, its buildings tall and majestic but lifeless as if frozen in time. Then, as they rounded a corner, Jace saw something that made his breath catch in his throat. Standing there, bathed in soft light, was a woman. She was tall, her violet skin glowing faintly in the dim light. Her silver hair cascaded down her back, and her eyes met Jace's with a familiarity that made his heart race. "Sira?" he whispered, his voice shaking. The woman's lips parted in recognition. "Jace, it's you." And just like that, the years and the distance fell away. Jace couldn't believe his eyes. Standing before him, looking just as he remembered but now so much more, was Sira. Her violet skin glowed softly in the dim light, her silver hair cascading over her shoulders like a waterfall of starlight. Her eyes, once filled with fear as a child, were now steady and sure. She was no longer the frightened girl he had saved years ago. She was a queen. Sira smiled, but it was a smile of bittersweet recognition, as if she too was still processing the strange and unexpected reunion. "Jace," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You really came back." For a long moment, neither of them moved. The years seemed to collapse in on themselves, and the entire universe felt like it was holding its breath. Jace had imagined this moment countless times in his mind, but never had he imagined how surreal it would feel in reality. "I promised," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Sira's smile widened, but there was a faint trace of sadness in her eyes. She reached out, touching the pendant that still hung around Jace's neck, the same one she had given him all those years ago. "You kept your promise, even though I thought you would forget," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "So much has happened since that day. So much I didn't want you to see." Jace frowned, his heart heavy with 1,000 unasked questions. "I don't care about what's happened. I care about you. Are you all right?" Sira took a deep breath, her gaze drifting to the city around them. It felt like she was looking for the right words, or perhaps the courage to speak them. She nodded slowly, but it was clear she carried a burden. "I am alive," she said softly. "But I am not the same." Jace looked at her, confused. He wanted to ask more, but before he could, the tall figure who had led him here spoke up. "We have been waiting for you, human," it said, its voice cold and calculating. "But you should know that your presence here is not welcomed by everyone." Jace's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" The figure moved closer, its armor gleaming under the low light. "The Valthari are a proud people. We do not easily trust outsiders, especially not humans." Jace felt a chill run down his spine, but he stood his ground. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I just want to see Sira again. That's all." Sira turned to the figure, her expression now firm and commanding. "Enough, Tarek," she said, her tone no longer the soft, gentle voice Jace remembered. There was authority in her words now, a strength she hadn't possessed when they were children. "He is here because of me, and I trust him." Tarek hesitated, but bowed his head in acknowledgement. He stepped back, though his sharp gaze never left Jace. Sira turned to Jace, her eyes softening once again. "Come with me," she said. "We need to talk." Without another word, she led Jace through the silent, empty city. As they walked, Jace couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The city was beautiful, yes, with its towering crystal structures and strange, ethereal glow, but it was also lifeless. There were no signs of daily life. No children running, no market stalls, no sounds of conversation. "Where is everyone?" Jace finally asked, unable to keep the question in anymore. Syrah's face darkened. "The Felthari are scattered now. Many are in hiding or they have left. The war, the betrayal, the political strife, it's taken everything from us." She paused, glancing at the ruins around them. "Our people have been torn apart, and I am the last of the royal bloodline. The throne is mine to claim, but it's not a throne I wanted. I wanted peace." Jace felt the weight of her words settle over him. She had not only survived a war, but now she carried the legacy of an entire civilization on her shoulders, a burden he could never truly understand. "Can you change it?" Jace asked gently. Syrah looked at him, her eyes filled with something he hadn't seen before. Doubt. "I don't know. The council is split. There are those who want peace, like me. And then there are those who believe we should retaliate against the humans for what happened. There's so much hatred still. So much fear." They stopped in front of a large building, its walls shimmering in the dim light. The structure was a marvel of Felthari architecture, with flowing curves and intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with life. It was a palace of sorts, though no longer the bustling heart of a kingdom. "This is where I live now," Syrah said quietly. "It's where I've been hiding." Jace followed her inside, his eyes scanning the ornate halls, the empty corridors. They moved through the silent palace until they reached a private chamber at the back. Inside, the room was lit with soft flickering lights, and a large window overlooked the city. Syrah gestured for him to sit. She did the same, but there was a tense air about her, as if she were preparing herself for something difficult. "I never wanted this," she said after a long pause. "I never wanted to rule. I just wanted to survive. But now, there's no turning back. The council will want answers from you, from me, and there are those who may not trust you." Jace leaned forward, his eyes locking onto hers. "I'll do whatever it takes to help. You're not alone in this." Syrah looked down at the pendant Jace still wore. "I thought you'd forgotten, Jace. But you came back. And now maybe, just maybe, there's hope." She looked at him, her expression softening. "Thank you for keeping your promise." Jace smiled, his heart warming despite the heavy atmosphere. "I didn't come back for nothing." Jace sat across from Syrah, his heart heavy with the weight of her words. The room around them was filled with soft light from the windows, but it felt colder than it should have been. Her eyes were distant, troubled, as though she were facing something far greater than herself. The silence hung between them, thick and suffocating. "You said you trusted me?" Jace said after a moment, his voice steady but filled with concern. "But what does that mean, Syrah? What do you need from me?" Syrah looked at him, her face softening. Yet there was a clear unease in her gaze. She took a deep breath and rose to her feet, walking to the window. Outside, the city stretched endlessly beneath the pale light of Felthari's twin moons. The skyline glittered with remnants of a once thriving civilization, elegant and beautiful, yet now still and broken. "I didn't expect you to come back," she began quietly, her voice almost a whisper. "And now that you are here, I find myself unsure of what to do." She turned to him, her eyes meeting his. "When you saved me all those years ago, I was just a frightened child. I had no idea what it meant to be royalty. I didn't know the weight of my people's legacy, and I didn't want it." Jay stood and walked toward her, sensing the turmoil inside her. "But you are still Syrah, the same person I met that day. You can do this. You don't have to face it alone." Syrah shook her head, her eyes filled with sadness. "It's not that simple. You don't understand. The Vaelthari are divided. We've been scattered. There are those who believe in peace, who want to rebuild our world, and there are those who are still angry and filled with hatred, especially toward humanity. They think the war is something we can never move past. They think we should rise up, take back what we lost. She turned away again, her hands gripping the window ledge. I don't want to lead like that. I don't want to start another war. But my position as heir to the throne, it forces me to choose. I can't bring them all together alone. Jace watched her in silence, seeing the conflict in her eyes. The girl he had once saved was no longer just a child, but a woman who had inherited a planet's struggles. He couldn't pretend to understand what it was like to carry such a burden. But he knew one thing: he would stand by her. You don't have to make that choice alone, Jace said softly. You have me, Sira. I came here for you, to help. I don't know the politics of your people, but I know how to fight for what's right. If you need me, I'll be here. I promised you that, and I'll keep that promise. Sira turned to him then, her expression a mixture of gratitude and doubt. She seemed to search his face, as if trying to decide whether she could believe in him, or if he could truly help her in this moment of crisis. I need more than just promises, Jace, she said, her voice breaking. I need to unite my people. I need to bring them together, to show them that we can be strong without war. But every time I try, the divisions only grow wider. My people, they are angry. The ones who want peace feel weak and helpless, and the others, they are consumed by their hatred. Jace stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. Then we'll fight for peace. We'll show them that humanity isn't the enemy. We'll make them see that there's another way. Sira looked up at him, her eyes wide with something like hope, but also uncertainty. You believe that? After everything that's happened? Jace nodded. I do. I've seen what happens when people choose peace over violence. I've seen how it can work, and if it's possible for me to help, I will. I'll do whatever it takes. Sira. Sira stood still for a long moment, her mind racing with the weight of everything. Then, slowly, she turned back to face the room, her shoulders squared and her posture more confident. The indecision in her eyes began to fade, replaced by a quiet determination. You're right, she said, her voice firmer now. I can't do this alone. I need help. Your help. We have to find a way to make peace, even if it's difficult. Even if others resist. Jace smiled. We'll do it together. You don't have to carry this alone. Just then there was a soft knock at the door. Sira turned and, without a word, gestured for the visitor to enter. The door slid open to reveal a tall figure. Tarek, the one who had first met Jace when he landed on Vaelthari. Tarek's expression was unreadable, but his eyes held a sharpness that Jace couldn't ignore. Your Highness, he began, bowing slightly. The council has gathered. They are waiting for you. Sira nodded, her expression hardening again as she turned to face Jace. The time has come. I have to face them. I have to make them listen. Jace gave her a reassuring smile. I'm with you, no matter what. Sira glanced at him, her eyes softening, just for a moment before she steeled herself once more. Then let's go. Together they walked out of the chamber, stepping into the unknown. Ahead of them lay a room full of powerful individuals, each with their own ideas about the future of Vaelthari. Some would want peace, others would want war. But whatever happened next, Jace knew he was no longer just a bystander. He was a part of this story, and he would stand by Sira until the very end. The council hall was silent when Sira and Jace entered. The room was large, its walls lined with shimmering panels that reflected the light in strange, beautiful patterns. The high ceiling was adorned with intricate carvings, telling the stories of Vaelthari's past, of battles won and lost, of peace and destruction. At the far end of the hall, a long table stretched, surrounded by the leaders of various factions within the Vaelthari community. Some of them were older, their faces lined with age and wisdom. Others were younger, with eyes sharp and full of determination. All of them turned as Sira and Jace entered, their gazes heavy with curiosity, suspicion, and a hint of fear. Sierra's heart beat faster. She could feel the weight of the room pressing down on her, the weight of her people's future resting on her shoulders. This was the moment she had been dreading for so long. "Your Highness," one of the counselors, a tall man with silver hair, said with a formal bow. "We have awaited your arrival." Sierra nodded but didn't speak immediately. Instead, she moved to the head of the table and stood there looking out over the counselors. She knew that what she said next would shape the future of her people, of her world. "We stand at a crossroads," Sierra began, her voice steady but carrying the weight of her years of responsibility. "The Vaelthari have been fractured, by war, by fear, and by hatred. We can continue down this path of division, letting our anger tear us apart, or we can choose a new way, a way of peace, of rebuilding, and of unity." The counselors exchanged uneasy glances. There were murmurs, some quiet, others more forceful. Sierra could feel their eyes on her, judging her, questioning her. She wasn't just an heir anymore. She was a leader, and the choices she made now would determine the future of her people. "What makes you think we can achieve peace?" one counselor, a woman with piercing green eyes, asked. "The humans have done nothing but harm us. They have taken our land, our resources, our freedom. They are our enemies, Sierra, and you—" She paused, her eyes narrowing at Jace, who stood by Sierra's side. "You bring one of them here. Why? What is it that you hope to accomplish by bringing this human into our midst?" Jace straightened, his eyes calm but unyielding. He had expected this. He had known that his presence here would be seen as a threat, a symbol of everything the Vaelthari had lost. But he wasn't afraid. He was here because Sierra had asked him to be. And he would stay no matter what. "I'm not here to make demands," Jace said, his voice clear and strong. "I'm here because Sierra believes in peace, and I believe in her. We all have to start somewhere. The past can't be changed, but the future is ours to shape." The counselor who had spoken earlier, the woman with the green eyes, scoffed. "You speak of peace as if it's something we can just will into existence. You don't understand what we've lost, what we've been through. You think you can just walk in and change everything with words?" Sierra took a deep breath, her hands clenched at her sides. "I know what we've lost," she said, her voice firm. "I know the pain, the anger, the grief. But I also know that we can't let it control us anymore. We can't keep fighting or we will destroy ourselves." There was a long pause. The counselors seemed torn, their faces etched with the weight of their own decisions. Finally, the counselor with the silver hair spoke again. "And what of those who do not want peace?" he asked, his tone measured but serious. "What of those who believe the only way forward is to fight, to reclaim what is ours by force?" Sierra looked around the table, meeting the eyes of every counselor. She knew that some of them wanted war, wanted to strike back at the humans for the years of suffering they had endured, but she also knew that if they chose war, it would be the end of everything. Her people would be lost. "We have to offer them something better," Sierra said softly. "We have to show them that there's another way, one where we don't destroy each other, one where we build something stronger together." Jace's heart raced. He could see the doubt in the counselor's eyes, but he also saw something else, something flickering at the edge of their expressions. Hope, a faint glimmer that maybe, just maybe, they could make this work. He glanced at Sierra, who was standing, tall, unwavering. She was ready to fight for this, to fight for the future of her people. But he knew it wouldn't be easy. The road ahead would be long, and the forces that opposed them were strong. It would take everything they had to change the course of history. One by one, the counselors spoke, each voice a mixture of skepticism and hope. There were those who agreed with Sierra, who wanted peace, who saw the potential for a future without war. And then there were those who were uncertain, who weren't ready to forgive the humans, who were still consumed by the anger of the past. The discussion stretched on for hours, with Jace and Sierra at the center of it all. The arguments were heated, the voices raised, but Sierra never wavered. She spoke of unity, of a new future for the Vaelthari, one where they could stand tall without fear. And Jace stood by her side, offering support and strength, never backing down. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the council reached a decision. It wasn't a victory, not yet, but it was a step in the right direction. They would begin negotiations. They would offer peace, with conditions. And they would give Sira the chance to lead her people into that future. As the meeting ended and the counselors began to disperse, Sira turned to Jace, her eyes filled with gratitude. "We're not done yet," she said quietly. "But this is a start." Jace smiled, his heart light for the first time since he had arrived. "We'll make it work, together." The tension in the air had never been thicker. Sira stood at the edge of the courtyard, her eyes scanning the horizon where the twin moons hung high in the sky. The city of Viewership was still silent, as if holding its breath, waiting for the outcome of the negotiations that had begun. The first steps toward peace had been made, but there was still so much to be done. And in the distance, Sira could feel the growing storm. Jace stood beside her, his presence a calm anchor in the midst of the uncertainty. He had stayed by her side through the heated council meeting, helping to guide the discussions and offering his support. But now, in the quiet of the night, the weight of their mission pressed down on them both. "I don't know if they will listen," Sira said quietly, her voice tinged with doubt. "The council may have agreed to peace talks, but there are others, factions within our people who want nothing to do with it." Jace glanced at her, his eyes steady and resolute. "You can't change everything in one day, Sira. This is a start, and we have to keep moving forward, no matter how hard it gets." Sira nodded slowly, but the worry in her eyes remained. She had spent so long trying to convince her people that peace was the only way forward. But every time she thought she had made progress, new obstacles arose, new factions forming, old wounds reopening. The path to peace seemed more like a battle with every step. "I know," she said softly, "but it feels like I'm always fighting against the past." Jace took a deep breath and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone in this fight. I promised I'd be here for you, and I meant it. We'll face this together." Sira turned to him, her expression softening. "I don't know what I'd do without you," she admitted. Jace smiled, a quiet, reassuring smile. "You don't have to do it alone." Just then, a loud voice interrupted their moment of calm. Tarek, the tall figure who had first met Jace when he landed on Viewership, walked toward them. His expression was serious, and there was an urgency in his step. "Your Highness," he said with a bow, "there is something you need to see." Sira's brow furrowed. "What is it?" Tarek hesitated for a moment before speaking. "A group of rebel factions has gathered. They are calling for war. They're not happy with the peace talks and they're preparing for an attack." Jace's heart sank. He had known this moment would come. The forces of war were always waiting for an opportunity to strike. But hearing it out loud made it feel all the more real. Sira's face hardened, the worry replaced by determination. "Where are they gathering?" "At the old fortress on the northern edge of the city," Tarek replied. "It's heavily guarded, and they've already begun arming themselves." Sira's mind raced. This was the challenge she had been dreading. The rebel factions were a dangerous force, and if they attacked, it could undo everything they had worked for. All the progress, all the hope for peace, could be destroyed in an instant. "We can't let them have the city," she said, her voice steady. "We have to stop them before they make their move." Jace nodded. "I'll go with you." Sira shook her head. "No, Jace, this is something I have to do. This is my fight." "But I promised you I'd be here," Jace insisted. "I won't let you face this alone." Sira met his eyes, her gaze soft but firm. "This isn't your fight. You've already done more than enough. This is for me to handle." Jace didn't argue. He knew Sira needed to face this on her own, even though every part of him wanted to protect her. He had promised to help her, to stand by her, but there were moments when the burden of leadership had to fall on her shoulders. He would respect that. All right, Jace said quietly, but I'll be here if you need me. Sira smiled, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, Jace. I won't forget it. Together they made their way to the northern fortress, with Tarek and a small group of loyal soldiers following behind. The journey was tense, the air heavy with the knowledge of what awaited them. The sound of their footsteps echoed in the empty streets, each step taking them closer to the heart of the rebellion. As they neared the fortress, the sight before them was sobering. The rebels had fortified the old stone walls, their banners flying high in the wind. The sound of shouting voices carried on the breeze, and the unmistakable glint of weapons caught the moonlight. Sira took a deep breath and turned to her soldiers. "We will not shed blood unless we have to," she said, her voice ringing with authority. "We will offer them peace first. If they refuse, then we will defend ourselves." Tarek nodded, his face grim. "Understood, Your Highness." Sira stepped forward, her eyes locked on the rebel leaders who stood at the gates of the fortress. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she kept her composure. This was the moment of truth. Would they listen? Would they choose peace? Or would they force her hand? She raised her hand, signaling for the rebel leader to approach. "I am Sira, the heir to the Vilethari throne," she called out, her voice steady but strong. "I come to you not as an enemy, but as a leader who believes in peace. I ask you to lay down your arms and join us in rebuilding our world together." For a long moment there was only silence. The rebel leader stepped forward, his face masked with suspicion. "Peace," he sneered. "How can we trust you? You, the one who would offer our people to the humans? You think peace is possible after everything they've done?" Sira's gaze didn't waver. "I know it's hard to believe. I know that the wounds are deep, but we cannot heal them with more bloodshed. We must move forward, or we will destroy everything we have left." The rebel leader paused, his eyes searching her face, weighing her words. The silence stretched on between Sira and the rebel leader, the tension thick in the air. The moonlight bathed the old fortress in an eerie glow, casting long shadows over the gathered crowd. For a moment it seemed like neither side would move, as if the weight of history itself hung in the balance. Sira stood tall, her eyes never leaving the rebel leader's face. Her heart raced, but she kept her composure. She had come here to offer peace, to offer a chance for the Vilethari to rebuild. It was the only way forward, and she would not back down now. The rebel leader, a tall man with a hard face and a scar running down his cheek, seemed to study her for a long time. His eyes flickered to the soldiers standing behind her, then back to her, as though trying to gauge her sincerity. "Do you think you can change everything with a few words?" he asked, his voice low but filled with disdain. "You stand here offering peace while your people still bleed. You want us to forget the years of suffering? The years of war?" Sira's voice remained calm, steady. "I know I can't undo the past. No one can. But I can offer a future where we don't destroy each other. We have to try, or else we'll all be lost. This is the only chance we have left." The rebel leader remained silent, his gaze unwavering. Jace, standing off to the side, could feel the weight of the moment. This was it. Sira was offering everything she had, her belief, her hope, and her future. She was asking for something no one had dared to ask in years: the possibility of peace. For a long time, nothing happened. Jace could feel the world holding its breath. He wanted to say something, to step forward and support her, but he knew this moment belonged to Sira. She had fought for this. She had earned the right to lead, to speak, and to make this decision. Finally, the rebel leader spoke again, his voice quieter now, tinged with uncertainty. "And if we refuse? What then?" Sira took a deep breath. "Then we will fight," she said softly, but with a firmness that made her words resonate in the night air. "But I hope we don't have to." The rebel leader's eyes softened, just a fraction. "You think peace is possible, after everything we've lost, after everything we've fought for?" Sira nodded. "Yes, I believe it is possible, but only if we're willing to try. Only if we're willing to put aside our differences and rebuild. Together. The leader didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned, his gaze sweeping over his followers, some of whom were now watching him with uncertain expressions. The tension in the air grew thick, and Jace held his breath, waiting for the outcome. The rebel leader turned back to Sira. His face was unreadable, but his eyes, those eyes, held something new. Something that hadn't been there before. Maybe, he said slowly. You're right. Maybe peace is the only way forward. He glanced at his followers, who murmured among themselves. But it won't be easy. There are many who will not forgive so easily. This is just the beginning. If we agree to peace, we must be ready to fight for it. To prove we are serious, we cannot be weak. Sira nodded, her expression hardening with resolve. I know. I'll fight for peace with everything I have. The rebel leader finally stepped back, lowering his weapon. Then we will follow you, he said, his voice rough but clear. We will give peace a chance. But remember this, Princess. If you fail, we will be the first to fight beside you. And if we succeed, we will rebuild what was lost. Together. For the first time, the sound of a crowd shifted from distrust to something else. A quiet, hesitant hope. Sira exhaled, her body releasing the tension that had held her captive for so long. She had done it. She had brought them together, even if only for a moment. Jace stepped forward, his heart swelling with pride. Sira had proven herself. She had brought peace to the rebels, and now she had the chance to lead her people into a new future. Thank you, Sira said softly to the rebel leader. Thank you for giving us a chance. The leader nodded, his expression softening. I never thought I'd see the day when peace was possible again. But you've shown us that it's worth fighting for. The crowd began to disperse, their murmurs now filled with a cautious optimism. Sira watched them go, her heart still pounding but with a new sense of purpose. She had made the first step. Now the real work would begin. Jace stood beside her, his presence a silent but powerful reassurance. You did it, he said, his voice filled with admiration. Sira turned to him, her eyes shining with gratitude. No, Jace. We did it. Together. For the first time since their reunion, Sira allowed herself to smile, the weight of the world finally lifting from her shoulders. There was still so much to do. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long while she felt a sense of peace. The kind of peace she had promised herself she would fight for, no matter the cost. And with Jace by her side, she knew she wouldn't have to face it alone.